Hi, video 24U. It's the late evening of November the 3rd, 2019, and we're going to look at temperature and all this to do with global warming and all this. You'll remember when I did a video there in Drumskerry. I'm talking a little loud because I notice outside it's hard to hear me. There was wind and it was very hard to hear me, but if you go back and look at it, you'll see that there was a rock and there was marks on the rock scraped by the ice age, and I had them marked with Tipp-Ex, and you'll see that. But I raised the question there of why the rock is still there. Why did clay not build over it, or why did it not come up or go down, or what? Why did it stay there? And I know some of these rocks are about the size of a car, some of them about the size of a small car, and some of them are massive rocks go way down under the ground. So there's no mystery about a big rock. I'm just talking about a rock that you'd fit in a wheelbarrow. Well, one of the interesting things about this particular place here, and it's just at one little corner of my farm, they call this the Meadows, and I'm just doing this off the tractor here, but you'll see here that there's bushes. They're Sally bushes. They're willow. They're a species of willow, and I have to be very careful not to hit the wrong button. So they're around here, and they're all along here. And of course, when I was going to school, I was told this townland is Drumsalla, and Salloch in Irish, in Gaelic, is dirty, but it's also a willow. And there are three other Drumsallas in Ireland, and they all claim it means willow ridge. Drum is a ridge, but this one had to be dirty ridge, you see, and so this is all the thing about our education system. They didn't give us the other option. I don't know would anyone name a townland dirty ridge when you have all these sallies, but they're just prolific around here along the river. There's examples of them all around there. Anyway, that's the way it is in Ireland. But the thing about it is that one explanation of why the rocks are still level with the ground after maybe 15,000 years is something I'll just try and show you now, and have to keep my microphone wire. It's all a bit difficult because you can accidentally hit the stop button and then it's all over. In this meadow here, you can see it going up along the river. Now there's the upper reaches of the River Glyde, and that flows through Dunneree Forest Park, and so you see the river going along here, and this was always a nice little trout stream, and there were always nice little trout in it. But here you see that it's caving in, and that's happening all down along here where it caves in. If you see that the side is always pushing in, and this has been going on since I was a child, and the equivalent of several tractor trailer loads fall in there every year. It's a bit hard to see with the camera, but an average year, a full tractor trailer load in this area of about 150 metres falls into the river. And there it's falling in there. And that's been going on here for years and years and years. And if you look over here, and it's not the cattle that's doing it, it's the bank is breaking down there. You'll see it on over there. But the funny thing about this is that the river never got any wider. That river is the same width it was 60 years ago. So how can the clay be falling in and the river never get any wider? If you brought an excavator in here and took out one tractor trailer load every year, you would eventually have a very wide river. So I just make that point, and my theory is that the topsoil is slipping. And as it does, it keeps falling into the river, and that the soil is building up, and that's why it doesn't build up over the stones. It's moving around the stones. Anyway, I digress on that. So, no, what I just want to get at you here is, I'm now here 25 miles east of Dundalk in County Louth. So if you look at the map of Ireland and see Dundalk, you'll see Carrickmacross and then Kingscourt. And I'm beside here. I'm just near Dunneree Forest Park. So if we look then at consider the age of the earth. By the way, I'm using Hubert B. Lamb, Climate History in a Modern World, as a guide. And there's other stuff, but Mr. Lamb is a very accomplished scientist. But the earth is 4.5 billion years old. It's 4,500,000 years old. 4,500 multiplied by 1,000 years old, right? So that's the age of the earth, roughly. And if you imagine that being on a spot at the tip of Ireland, at Portmagee in South Kerry, and I'm here in Kingscourt, that's roughly a certain distance, which would be, I would equate to that as a benchmark, right? Now, you can take it that the first 3,500 million years, the first 3.5 billion years. Remember, it's 4.5 billion years old, and we're talking about the first 3.5 billion years. It's not very interesting. There was all kinds of things happening, lava and all that sort of stuff. But they don't really know that much about it because everything was changing. So you can kind of forget about the first 3.5 billion years, and that leaves a thousand million years, or 1 billion to bring it to 4.5. And the first part of that they don't know a whole lot either. But what is kind of interesting is the last 500 million years, the last 500 million years, and that's 1/9 of the total period the Earth is in existence. And it'd roughly be, if you came up from Kerry to here, it'd be roughly about Clonmelon or Delvin in County Westmeath, or maybe even Mullingar, not even that, maybe Kells. So it's a chunk, it's 1/9. But it's 11% of the time that we're talking about the last 500 million years. Now, you can forget about before that. But what we do know is that, as I say here, South Kerry would be to Kingscourt would be roughly the distance, right? I'm just using that as a benchmark in time, if we use miles for time or kilometres for time. Now, the 500 million years was a very interesting time, and the world was quite hot, and a lot of life developed then. At that stage, you had bacteria emitting oxygen and all that sort of stuff you see on telly. And things were settled down quite a bit, and you had plants, and you had an abundance of plant life that took in all the spare carbon dioxide that had been excluded up into the air, put up into the air by volcanoes. And definitely the huge amount of carbon dioxide did have some little warming effect. But then again, they cannot say that it's the tilt of the Earth that's doing it. It's not an exact science. I'm not sure of that. But the most interesting time is the 200,000 years. 200,000. Now, don't forget, we are talking about, no, sorry, we're talking about 500 million years. Now we're talking about 200,000 years, a fifth of a million. A fifth of a million, right? 200,000 years. And this period then would be only equal to about a mile up the road. It's a very short period, maybe less, maybe 1.5 kilometres, maybe only a kilometre. Anyway, it's only a little bit from here. In the overall length of the world's existence, it's a tiny piece. And during that period, then you had heat. And a lot of the oil reserves were already being laid down. A lot of the fossil fuels were already being laid down. The place was walking with dinosaurs and animals and everything else. But man had not come on the scene. So the heat got quite hot. But there was cold periods in between it. There were cold periods. And during this period, Greenland, they ice melted. And there were crocodiles in Greenland. They've got fossils of crocodiles in Greenland. Greenland was warm. It was balmy. Around here, it was lovely and warm. Now, the Earth wasn't the same shape. The continents were not the same shape at that time. There was a place called Pangaea, which the whole lot was all into one, and America divided then out. So there was a very extremes of temperature. But the next thing was the dinosaurs were going flying big reptiles, huge reptiles, the size of a big tractor, big size of a lorry in some cases. But 65 million years ago, comparatively short. We're talking about only a half a mile up the road. The dinosaurs got wiped out by means of a huge meteorite that struck Mexico, and it created the conditions that killed all the big dinosaurs. Now, mind you, all the dinosaurs were not killed. I don't see any just right here now, but it's quite common to see them because the birds were small and they survived. Birds are a dinosaur, and in Kentucky Fried Chicken, when you have it, it's a dinosaur. Hard to believe that, but birds are a dinosaur, and this area here would have all kinds of birds flying around. So the dinosaurs got wiped out, the big ones. The small ones became small. The biggest of them, I think, is nearly an ostrich, as far as I know. So they became, they thrived at the small ones, and you can get birds down as small as a wren, so they're very small. So anyway, the thing that happened was that 24,000 years ago, now this is very important, you have 200,000 years, come down now to 24,000 years ago, and then everything changed. And it can't be carbon dioxide. They don't really know. It can't be the lack of it or anything. But I'm just going to go back out here, and I have to watch my bit of a wire here. I think you can see this stick. Oh, I just have to get this. Only can you see this stick here. I'll have to just walk back here and just let you see the stick. Okay? This is a slating lat. Now I had difficulty there with the microphone. That's a slating lat, and it's 2.3 meters long. It's about 91 inches. Now the thing about it is that there from here to Kerry is the equivalent of the period from the ice age began in the history of the earth. I'll just get this out again to show it to you here now. Just clip that there. I'm going to go back again. That is the period from the ice age began. Right? I hope you can see that. You can't get it in the focus. That's all. It's a 2.3 meter rod, or 91 inches now. So that'll give you an idea. So the point about it is here that this stick represents the beginning of the ice age 24,000 years ago. 24,000 years ago. Okay? And the ice age, there was a mile high of ice here. It was probably caused by a change in the tilt of the earth. But there were people living in England, not in Ireland. And they had to get out and flee down to Europe. And the same in America. It came well down on America. It was over the Great Lakes in America, in the United States. It covered all of Canada. And it covered a lot of Russia too, of course. So now remember, we're talking here about me being in Kingscourt in County Cavan, Ireland, and 250 or 270 miles away, south tip of Kerry in Ireland. And this is all this area represents, this stick. So we see here it's blue. I'll just go back a bit here now. It's blue. So this blue part represents the ice age to here. 10,000 years of it. And then it began to get slightly warm for about 1,500 years, or maybe the melting started a little before 10,000 years. Just it got fairly well on at 10,000 years, and then over 1,000 years it receded, and all that was left then was the poles, the North and South Pole, right? So then so here we have the ice age. So it goes along like this. Then it went. Then it came to here, and at this stage it was over. And this here is roughly 8,000 years ago, 8,500, 9,000 years ago. And people came into Ireland just right here. And then nobody knows much what happened after this period. Nobody knows, right? Because there's not a good enough record. They have a fair idea, but what they do know about is about 2,000 years before Christ, you get roughly to this stage here. Now I'll just turn this around. You get roughly to this stage here. Roughly about here. That black mark represents the birth of Christ. See that there? That's the birth of Christ. And that's the black mark. So we had all this period from the end of County Kerry in Ireland to Kingscourt in County Cavan. And this represents everything that our climate change theories, our carbon taxes, our wind farms and everything is based on. This little piece. And just before Christ was born, about 300 years before Christ was born, it got warm, the Roman warm period. And they were able to grow wine in England, and that's why the Romans were able to live out. And St. Patrick arrived roughly here. And he was able to live out because lovely, the weather was absolutely lovely. And so he lived out about here. Now then there was a cool period, and I didn't represent it too good here. The cool period was probably a bit wider. So the cool period lasted from about 450 after Christ, and St. Patrick was here for a bit of that. And then it was getting cold, but it was a cold period, and this was when the Irish monks went abroad to establish monasteries and all that stuff, and the Vikings really didn't move out too much in that case. But then 450 to 850, that's 400 years, it got warm, and that's the medieval or the Viking ice age. Or sorry, warm period. This is the Roman warm period. There was a cool period just like something like now, and then you had the medieval warm period, right? And this period lasted from 850, when the monks occupied Skellig Michael, until 1250, 400 years. So there appears to be roughly a 500 or 400 year cycle. 500 or 400 cold, 500 warm, 500 cold, 400 warm, 400 cold, this type of thing. But it's not exact. So just remember now, from Portmagee in County Kerry to here in Kingscourt and County Cavan, everything we hear and everything we're told starts roughly here. That early Ice Age. Oh, sorry, that early warm period. This area here was not ice. This was good enough. The Egyptians had an empire at that stage. So you go along with it. This is now from the start of the Ice Age, right? Here it is here cold. It's all to here about the middle of this batten, this stick. The Ice Age starts to end, and then we have the present mild temperate climate, and then that goes on then from 9,000 years ago up until approaching the birth of Christ. Here's here on this, and this is the only bit that's left. And this black mark here is the millennium, the year 2000. So this wee bit is the bit we're living in now. Okay, and therefore it got warm before Christ for 400 or 500 years. It got cold again for a few hundred years. It got warm again for exactly 400 years. The monks occupied Skellig Michael. They left in 1250. The Vikings established a farming community in southern Greenland, and they had to go exactly in 1250. So these two, the Roman and the medieval or Viking warm periods, are two warm periods that occurred. And if you ever go to Skellig Michael to see the monastery there, the tour guides will tell you that. And then at 1250 it got cold. And it got continuously cold until about the year 1700. About the year 1700. It got very cold in Ireland. There was a famine in 1741. Now, famines in Europe, mind you, are caused more by the intervention of people rather than the weather, because there is always a bit of food if you could own the food. But the point about it is that in 1500 they were able to hold a fair on the River Thames in Britain. Okay, so you had this real cold period, and then at 1850, the year 1850, it began to get slowly warm again. And it got warm. There's where we are now. And this warm period is not as warm as these periods, but it is getting slightly warmer. And there's the people that are given this stuff are trying to claim that we have to now stop all our activities, that we are causing climate change, when in fact this is a cycle: up, down, up, down, up, down. Now, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change deliberately airbrushed these out. They removed these two to make it appear that it was cold all along here, and then it's now suddenly getting hot. And a man called Michael Mann pushed this in America, and he sued another person who said he was talking nonsense, and he lost. Because he is the hockey stick. He has it going like this. That's known as the hockey stick. Whereas that's not what happened. It went up, down, up, down, up, down, and it'll continue doing that. That's very, very important to understand. There were two warm periods from about 300 years before the birth of Christ until the 1850 warm period. And the Little Ice Age here lasted 600 years, from 1250 to 1850, and it gradually got warmer since then, and it hasn't warmed anything in the last while. So I hope that helps. I can't see that. Oh yeah, I hope that helps now to let you see the way it went. It's difficult for me to do it out here because there's always a danger of tripping over something, and we're in 18 minutes. So what this essentially means is that there is no proof that this current slightly warm period is unique. And by the way, the best brain says that we have 50,000 years before the next ice age comes. But we don't know. There's a theory that the carbon dioxide we are putting out is keeping off an ice age. Nobody really knows. But what I'm saying is, if we don't know, we shouldn't be introducing taxes on it, and we shouldn't be trying to get politicians elected on it. It's a very inexact science. Mother Nature, I think, will do what it wants to do. We've had all this change in the past, and there were no humans around. And it's very interesting that when humans came on the scene, the first thing they tried to do was to change the weather. They would bury babies alive. They would make sacrifices to the gods when the crops failed due to a bad year. They're always trying to look for something and to blame the weather on the man above or whatever, and the reality, and build these wind turbines, as you can see here, and all this stuff. They're just infatuated with trying to change the weather and thinking they can control the hand of God and the hand of nature. And over in Australia now, we have a terrible drought in Western Australia, and they're actually having to slaughter cows because they just have no water for them. But they tried to claim it's climate change, yet there was no people there 250 years ago. The local people were getting along just fine. And now the Europeans go over there and they expect the weather to move from England to Australia. And the weather doesn't work that way. So my camera now, I hope that's all right. I'm glad I got that far, and it's a bit tricky here with this microphone. It's a lovely evening here now, and I'll go on now and get a wee bit of fothering done for the cattle before they arrive. Thank you very much. I hope there's something of interest in that. I hope I didn't make any major mistake in it. Sometimes you confuse centuries for millennium and all that type of thing. No, we're talking back 2,300 years that we know about. We're talking about intervals of warm, cold, between 400 and 600 years. There has been 2 of them already. There may be another one now in that period, and they'll continue for a long time more. And we have to stop listening to people who are only guessing and making it up, and try and get a bit of common sense into how we do things. So with that in mind now, I'll let you go. If you think this was of interest, please give me a like. I'd love to get a like, at least to give something. Or if you don't like it, if you think it's wrong, give it a thumbs down, and share it around, and it's just great to get that done. So thank you very, very much, and I'm off now. Bye.